Saturday, July 19th, 2026, and I need you to pay close attention to what I am about to walk you through, because what is happening across the United States right now is not one heat wave, it is two. The first one hit the eastern half of the country over the 4th of July weekend and killed at least 44 people. The second one started building over the west on July 6th, and this past week it shattered all-time temperature records in cities that had never seen anything like it. Salt Lake City hit 109 degrees on July 12th, a number that had never been recorded there in the city's entire history. Billings, Montana reached 111 degrees the same day. And the heat dome responsible for those records is not breaking. It is expanding eastward across the central United States right now, pushing into the plains and the Midwest this week, with temperatures that forecasters are comparing to conditions not seen since the Dust Bowl era of the 1930s. If you watched the July 4th heat wave and assumed the worst was behind us, this update is going to change how you understand what the rest of this month looks like. Because the most dangerous stretch of this summer is not the part that already happened. It is the part that is still unfolding. And I am going to walk you through every piece of it right now. If this kind of grounded, no-hype weather coverage is something you rely on, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because the next update could come at any point this week. Let me start with what has already happened, because the numbers from the first wave are worse than most people realize, and they set the stage for understanding why the second wave is so dangerous. Starting in the final days of June, a massive high-pressure system, what meteorologists call a heat dome, locked into position over the central and eastern United States. High-pressure systems act as a cap on the atmosphere. They suppress cloud formation, prevent convective cooling, compress the air beneath them, and they are extremely effective at staying in place once they establish themselves. This particular dome drew hot, humid air northward from the Gulf of Mexico and held it over the most densely populated corridor in the country for the better part of a week. Between June 30th and July 5th, at least 148 daily high-temperature records were broken across the eastern United States. Washington, D.C. recorded 103 degrees on July 4th, the hottest Independence Day in the city's history. Philadelphia hit 101 degrees 3 days in a row, something that had never happened before in the city's recorded weather history. Atlantic City, New Jersey, tied its all-time hottest temperature ever at 106 degrees. New York City's Central Park reached 100 degrees for the first time since 2012. And heat index values, the number that reflects what the temperature actually feels like when you combine air temperature with humidity, reached 115 degrees across parts of the Northeast. Over 165 million Americans were under major or extreme heat risk advisories simultaneously. Now here is the part of this story that I think most people watching coverage of the July 4th heat wave did not fully absorb. At least 44 people died. 29 of those deaths were in New Jersey alone. 7 were in Pennsylvania, 4 in Illinois, 3 in New York, 1 in Mississippi. On the National Mall in Washington during the 4th of July celebrations, medical teams responded to more than 700 heat-related calls over the holiday weekend, with 40 people taken to the hospital. The Great American State Fair had to shut down for 4 hours in the middle of the afternoon. And those 44 confirmed deaths are almost certainly a significant undercount. Heat does not kill the way most people picture it. The stereotypical image is a person collapsing from heat stroke in direct sunlight. That does happen, but the majority of heat-related deaths do not look like that at all. They look like heart attacks. They look like kidney failure. They look like strokes. They look like the quiet worsening of a chronic condition that was manageable last week but is no longer manageable after 5 consecutive nights where the body never got a chance to cool down. That last point is the single most important thing I can tell you about what makes a heat wave genuinely lethal, and it is the reason the second wave bearing down on the country right now has forecasters so concerned. It is not the afternoon high that kills the most people. It is what happens overnight. In a normal summer night, air temperatures drop significantly after the sun sets. The ground releases the heat it absorbed during the day. The air cools. Your body temperature drops. You sleep. Your cardiovascular system gets a chance to recover. That overnight reset is what allows your body to survive another hot day. What happened during the July 4th heat wave, and what is happening again right now across the West and the expanding central heat dome, is that the overnight temperatures are not dropping. Humidity acts like an insulating blanket over the ground. It traps the heat close to the surface. So instead of cooling from 100 degrees during the day down to 70 overnight, you cool from 100 down to 85 or 87. You lie in a room that is still nearly 90 degrees at midnight. Your body cannot shed its core heat efficiently. And when that happens night after night for 3, 4, 5 days in a row, the cumulative stress on the human body becomes genuinely life-threatening, particularly for elderly people, people with heart or lung conditions, people without air conditioning, and people who live alone with nobody checking on them. That is what the CDC calls cumulative heat stress, and it is the mechanism behind the vast majority of heat wave deaths, not the peak afternoon temperature that gets the headline. Now connect that mechanism to what is currently happening. The second heat dome that began forming over the western United States on July 6th has already produced all-time records that were not supposed to be breakable. Phoenix hit 113 degrees on 3 consecutive days. Salt Lake City's 109 degrees on July 12th was the highest temperature ever recorded in the city. Billings, Montana, at 111 degrees, the same day, broke a record that the National Weather Service said had stood since 1901. And this dome is not dissipating. AccuWeather forecasters have stated explicitly that it will continue through the third week of July and expand its eastern flank across the Central Plains, the Midwest, and eventually into parts of the South and East. Wichita, Kansas is looking at temperatures this week that forecasters are comparing to Dust Bowl-era records from the 1930s. The NWS has already issued major heat risk advisories across wide swaths of the interior West, the Plains, and parts of the South, and those advisories are expected to expand in coverage as the week progresses. What makes this second wave particularly concerning from a public health standpoint is the compounding effect. The eastern half of the country barely had 10 days of reprieve between the end of the first heat dome and the expansion of the second. For people whose bodies were already stressed by the July 4th event, for hospitals that were already managing elevated emergency admissions, for power grids that were already running at high demand, the arrival of a second round of extreme heat in the same month is not simply additive, it is multiplicative. Infrastructure that was adequate for one 5-day heat event is not necessarily adequate for 2 in the same month. Bodies that recovered from the first event with margin to spare may not have that same margin the second time. Now, every time a heat wave dominates the news cycle, the same question surfaces. Is this climate change? And I want to give you the most precise answer the science currently supports, rather than a slogan in either direction. On June 11th of this year, the National Weather Service confirmed that El Niño conditions were present in the tropical Pacific, with the possibility of a super El Niño developing as the year progresses. El Niño is a natural climate pattern that raises global temperatures and increases the probability of heat waves. That is a direct contributing factor to what we are seeing this summer. Simultaneously, the long-term data on heat waves in the United States shows a clear and well-documented trend. The average number of extreme heat events in major U.S. cities has roughly doubled since the 1960s, from about 2 per year to about 10 per year between 2010 and 2020. The length of the average heat wave season has extended by approximately 46 days since the 1960s. And the annual death toll from heat in the United States has nearly doubled from roughly 1,069 in 1999 to 2,394 in 2024, making heat the deadliest form of weather in America, killing more people each year than hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods combined. Those are not projections, those are measurements. The honest scientific answer to the question of whether climate change is involved is that it is one of two major factors, alongside El Niño, driving the intensity and duration of what we are experiencing right now. Neither factor alone would produce this. Both together are producing exactly what the models predicted they would. Here is what I want to leave you with, and it is the most practical thing I can say during an active heat event. The confirmed death toll from any heat wave is always a dramatic undercount. Heat-triggered cardiac events are frequently recorded as heart attacks on death certificates with no mention of heat. Heat-exacerbated kidney failure is recorded as kidney failure. The true excess mortality from a major heat wave is typically 2 to 3 times higher than the confirmed count, and it is not fully known until months after the event when statisticians compare the total death count against the seasonal baseline. That means the 44 confirmed deaths from the July 4th wave are almost certainly the floor, not the ceiling. And it means the second wave, now expanding across the country, is arriving in a population that has already absorbed one round of cumulative heat stress this month, with the worst of it potentially still ahead. Stay hydrated. Keep water close to you at all times. Limit your time outdoors between noon and 5 in the afternoon. If your home does not have air conditioning, find your nearest cooling center, a library, a community center, a public building, and use it. Check on elderly neighbors who live alone. Check on them today, not after the heat breaks. A phone call or a knock on a door during a heat wave like this can save a life. And understand that the nights matter more than the days. If your bedroom is still above 85 degrees at midnight, your body is not recovering. That is when heat illness moves from uncomfortable to dangerous. I will be back with another update as soon as the models show me something new and significant. This has already been the deadliest stretch of summer weather in years across the United States, and the pattern driving it is not finished. The heat dome is not breaking, it is reloading, and the most dangerous days of July 2026 may not be the ones that already made the headlines. They may be the ones that are still coming.